They were only 20, with nothing but a broken past and each other. No home, no safety. Just a cheap piece of land no one else wanted. People called it cursed. Said anyone who stepped on it lost everything. But when two black twin brothers tried to start over on that forgotten farm, the whispers didn't stay whispers for long. Strange things began happening. And then the people came. What followed wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something uglier. The kind of truth no one wants to face. So why did everyone try to stop them from staying? At 20, they had already lost more than most people ever do. No stable home, no safety net, just two brothers holding on to each other in a world that seemed determined to push them out. They moved from place to place, never staying long, always feeling watched, judged, unwelcome. Being young and black made every step harder, every opportunity smaller. Then came the farm. It was cheap, too cheap. $50 for land no one wanted. People in the nearby town avoided even saying its name. They called it cursed, said nothing good ever lasted there. But for the twins, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like their only chance. A place where they could finally build something of their own. Away from the noise, away from the rejection. At first, it was quiet. Almost too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you don't belong there. But they ignored it. They had no other choice. What they didn't realize was that the land wasn't the only thing people feared. The first sign came quietly. A truck slowed down on the dirt road leading to the farm, its engine rumbling low like it didn't want to be heard. It didn't stop. It didn't need to. The driver just stared, long enough to make it clear this wasn't curiosity. It was something else, something heavier. The brothers tried to ignore it. They worked from sunrise to dark, clearing weeds, fixing broken fences, turning a place people feared into something that finally felt like theirs. For the first time, there was purpose, control, hope. But the road never stayed empty for long. Day by day, more cars passed, slower, closer, sometimes, stopping just far enough to watch without speaking. And then came the small things, tools going missing, fresh work undone overnight, footprints in the soil that weren't theirs. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. One morning, they found something nailed to the front of the broken barn. No name, no message written out clearly. Just a symbol, one that didn't need explaining. One that carried years of hate in its shape alone. That's when the silence changed. It wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It felt alive, watching, waiting. They still stayed. Because leaving meant going back to nothing. But staying started to feel like stepping into something far worse. Nights became the hardest. Every sound stretched longer in the dark. Every movement outside felt closer than it should be. Sleep came in pieces, never fully. One of them always awake, always listening. And then it escalated. One evening, as the sky dipped into darkness, the sound came again, but this time it didn't pass. The truck stopped right at the edge of their land. Doors opened. Voices carried through the air, low and sharp, like they didn't care who heard. The brothers didn't move. Not out of calm, but because they knew moving could make things worse. Minutes felt like hours. Then, just as suddenly, the truck left. No confrontation, no direct words, just a message. You don't belong here. The next day, the damage was impossible to ignore. Part of the fence torn down, supplies scattered, something built with effort, destroyed overnight like it meant nothing. But it wasn't just destruction. It was a warning getting louder. Still, they didn't leave, because walking away would mean proving something they refused to accept, that they had no right to exist there. Days later, the tension reached a breaking point. Another vehicle approached, but this time it didn't slow down. It drove straight onto the property, and for the first time, the brothers realized this wasn't just about fear anymore. It was about to become something they might not survive. The engine didn't shut off. It roared louder as the vehicle pushed deeper onto their land, crushing the ground they had spent days trying to fix. Headlights cut through the fading light, blinding, deliberate, like they wanted to erase everything in front of them. Doors swung open. Figures stepped out, slow and certain, carrying the kind of confidence that came from knowing no one would stop them. The brothers stood still, not because they weren't afraid, but because fear had nowhere left to go. Everything they had built sat behind them. Every broken board they had repaired. Every inch of land they had fought to claim as their own. And now, in seconds, it felt like it could all disappear. The voices came next, loud, sharp, filled with the kind of hate that didn't need explanation. It wasn't just about the land. It was about who they were and who they weren't allowed to be. One step forward, then another. The distance between them closed. The tension turned suffocating. One wrong move could turn everything into something irreversible. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. No one else around, no help coming. Just two brothers facing something much bigger than themselves. And yet, they didn't back because walking back meant surrendering everything. Not just the land, but their right to stand there at all. The shouting grew louder. The threats clearer. The line had been crossed. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was an attempt to erase them. For a split second, everything balanced on the edge. Fear, anger, survival. And then, something shifted. Not outside, inside them. Because in that moment, they realized this was no longer just about enduring. It was about refusing to disappear. And what they chose to do next would change everything. Morning didn't bring peace. It revealed everything. The damage was worse in daylight. Wood splintered, the ground scarred, like someone hadn't just tried to destroy things, but to break something deeper. But this time, something had changed. The fear that had lived inside them the night before had turned into something else, something steady. They didn't leave. They rebuilt. Every broken piece was lifted again. Every mark left behind wasn't erased, it was remembered. Because this place was no longer just land. It was a statement. Days passed. And slowly, something shifted. The same people who once only watched from a distance started to stop. Some out of curiosity, some out of disbelief, because the ones they tried to scare away were still standing, still building. Their story began to spread. First across the nearby town, then beyond it. People started hearing about two young brothers who had nothing, no home, no support, but refused to be pushed out. And this time, not every voice carried hate. Some carried support, but the truth didn't change. What happened to them wasn't just one moment. It wasn't just one place. It was something bigger, something that keeps happening in different forms to different people, again and again. The difference this time was simple. They didn't leave. They proved that hate can try to take space, but it can't take will. And now the question isn't whether they belonged there. The question is, how many others are still being told they don't? And how much longer will the world pretend not to see it?